Hey everybody, welcome back to Church Public. I am Matt Odegaard, your host as always, and I really appreciate you tuning in. Today, we are talking about, well, these are all 100% real stories. There's a modern golden calf of sorts placed on the top of the New York City courthouse in honor of abortion, of all things. The Vice President of America forgets a crucial part of the Declaration of Independence, and a Biden-appointed federal district judge sort of doesn't know the U.S. Constitution, which seems to be an important thing if you're a federal judge, but hey, what do I know? Then, of course, we have sweet, cute little M&Ms candy, which already went woke, and we talked about a little bit ago, now removes their spokes candy. Yes, apparently that's a thing. They removed them all together in favor of a Saturday Night Live comedian. This is the world we're living in. I'm Matt Odegaard, and this is Church Public. Welcome back to Church Public. I'm Matt Odegaard, your host as always, and I really appreciate you stopping by today. If you're just listening to this, man, I appreciate you. I appreciate you so much, and I really thank you for being part of this journey that we're on together. If by any chance you want to see the video, you can go to churchpublic.com/podcasts and check it out there. If not, you can listen to it on Apple and Spotify and Google and like 17 other places that I'm not going to name that apparently people listen to podcasts on. Who knew? But anyway, appreciate you, tuning in and making this a part of your day. Your time's valuable, and I want to honor that. If you haven't already, hit the like and the subscribe and the share and the notifications, hit all the things, and then if this just gets too much for you, again, as I say, just throw your phone out the window because you're not going to need it anyway where we're going. No, but really appreciate you being part of this, and this is to bring awareness to the fact that we're living in a world that is a hot disaster right now. No, it just is. We if you are a follower of Jesus, which I hope you are, and we'll talk about more in a little bit, then it's becoming more and more difficult to just live in that and to be in a place where you share your faith, you live out the things that are true, and I hope to help you with that, right? I want to bring current events from a Christian perspective, but in that, I want to give you the tools that you need to be able to do your own work, do your own research. We're going to look at some Bible. We're just going to talk about some Christian principles, some Christian theology, so that you understand how to live in this world, but not become like the world, which so many are inclined to do. We just want to help you in any way that we can. So for more of the podcasts, search it on all the podcast places. Again, you can always go to churchpublic.com, find out more there. And as always, I appreciate you. So let's get to some news stories. Here is a fun one, I guess. This is a story about M&Ms who just wants to be part of the cultural conversation, even though they say they really don't. This is just, I don't know. We have to talk about this because they made us talk about this. I'll be quite honest. I really haven't eaten M&Ms I can't remember the last time I ate M&Ms, so I don't care that much from a candy perspective, but apparently we have to care. And that's really the bottom line is, apparently we have to care. Everyone has to care. Even candy companies have to care about all the things. They yell at us for being political and making everything political, but the reality is everything is political because you live in the world. If you live in the world and go out of your door in the morning, you've entered a place with, here comes, other people. So it is political because anytime you're interacting with other people, you're living in the polis, the Greek word for city. So you're around other people, which is political because you have ideas and beliefs and they have ideas and beliefs. And somewhere in the middle of those, we've got to come together and figure out what to do. So M&Ms, let's see, I've got a slide for you on this one. If you haven't already and you're just listening, you can check this out on video. Otherwise, I'll read some things here and get us on the same page. So this is a tweet post that M&Ms put out recently, because if you don't remember, if you don't remember, just a little bit ago, the M&Ms, they say they don't want to be political. They say they don't care about any of the political things, but they entered the conversation. I think I have a write-up on that here as for what they did. Because earlier they sometime last year they retired, or they changed the Spokes candy, right? They have a name for their candies, and their candies were cute, right? They had little personalities. There was the grumpy one and the flirty one and the, I guess you'd say, not as smart one, whatever. So last year they decided that was no good, and it wasn't intersectional enough, and it wasn't representative enough of people or something. So the one that was more feminine, they got rid of the boots that the girl candy was wearing and changed the boots to sneakers because girls, or I don't know, I can't even describe what's happening, but you know, M&Ms. So they changed all these things to try to make M&Ms more representative of people, I guess. This is M&Ms not wanting to be political, but doing everything completely politically. So they changed the girly one to with high boots to sneakers, and I guess there was an LGBT one too. I don't know. We're talking about candy here, people. So on the one hand, it really doesn't matter. But on the other hand, apparently it does matter, because everything, every product that you have, every TV show that you watch, every sports match that you are entertained by now has to be political. We talked about that a couple of days ago with this hockey player who was Russian Orthodox Christian and did not want to wear a pride jersey out to the pregame warm-up. And because he said, no, I'm not going to do that, he has been just destroyed in the mainstream media as a bigot and a racist and a homophobe and all the things, right? Because you have to, it's not live and let live. It's not just let me be me. Let me have a relationship with who I want, which we were originally told that's all we want. We just want to love who we love. That's all. No, it's not that. You have to recognize it's not that. It is that you must go along or we will get rid of you. That's the only option. You don't get to have another option. You don't get to just live and let live. It's the other side of that famous song, Live and Let Die. That's the world we're in now. Live and let die. You must live like we do, or you're destroyed. Anyway, back to M&Ms. I got a little dark for a second. So we're back to M&Ms. I'll bring the slide up again for y'all if you're watching, and if you're listening, I will describe it for you. So this slide, this post from M&Ms says, America, let's talk. In the last year, we've made some changes to our beloved Spokes candies. We weren't sure if anyone would even notice. I'm just going to pause here in the middle and say, of course you thought someone would notice. The whole reason you did it is so that you would notice. There's a conservative commentator who talks about this face tattoo syndrome, and I've noticed it too. I didn't title it exactly the same, though I will admit at one point I was having a dinner. I'm going to be honest. If you're just listening, you may not know this, but I have a couple tattoos. There it is. I've given my admission for the day. I have a couple tattoos. And we were having a conversation. I was having a conversation with my children about tattoos and when it's appropriate, when it's not appropriate. And that's a weird conversation to have with your kids, but you have to have those conversations, right? So I'm having this conversation, and I said, just know you should never get a face tattoo. And of course, our server comes up and goes, oh, I have a face tattoo. And I'm like, oh, geez. But here's the reason why. If you have other tattoos, you can wear sleeves. You can cover them to some degree. If you're in the company of someone who just doesn't understand what tattoos are all about. And I'm not going to talk much about that in theology right at this moment. Maybe I'll do an episode later about it. But when you do a face tattoo, you will be noticed for the tattoo that's on your face. Like Mike Tyson, you just have something on your face, and then you have something on your face. And when someone points out, hey, you have a tattoo on your face, you go, don't look at the tattoo on my face. But here's the problem, right? Like, you put the tattoo on your face so someone would look at the tattoo on your face. So we're in the same thing. M&Ms says, hey, we didn't think anybody would notice that we were changing the M&Ms, even though we broadcast to the world that we were changing the M&Ms. It's the same thing. You did this, and then we noticed you did it. And now you're angry that we noticed that you told us that you would do it. I know it goes around and around. It's crazy mental gymnastics, but this is the world that we live in. And we have to pay attention to these things because they want to hit you from both sides. So they went on to say, we weren't sure anyone would even notice. And we definitely didn't think it would break the internet. But now we get it. Even a candy's shoes can be polarizing, which was the last thing M&Ms wanted, since we're all about bringing people together. I'm just going to do a dramatic pause here and go, okay, continuing on. from M&Ms. Therefore, we have decided to take an indefinite pause from the spokes candies. In their place, we are proud to introduce the spokesperson America can agree on, the beloved Maya Rudolph. We are confident Miss Rudolph will champion the power of fun to create a world where everyone feels like they belong. Now, I guess I don't mind Maya Rudolph. She is a Saturday Night Live comedian, if you are not familiar with the name. But we're exchanging candy for a real person and saying this is an equal thing. I think this is kind of funny too. This is this is a campaign that apparently exists, and they've changed M&Ms. Now it's not M&Ms, they're Ma and Yaz, or if you're not watching, Maya's, because Maya Rudolph. So now M&M's candy is Maya's candy. I know, this is the world we're living in. Now, I guess, and this is just a guess, but it's a pretty good guess, and maybe a little educated guess, that this whole thing is because of the Super Bowl, and this will be an M&M's, because M&M's has always done some kind of funny, entertaining Super Bowl commercial. But we'll see what happens. I think it's kind of ridiculous either way. But anyway, this is M&M's. So here's the bottom line, right? We are talking about candy, but we're talking about more than candy, because we're talking about the cultural norm that has now been established that you must identify with a side of the culture. You cannot be neutral. There is no neutral. Now, the reality is there has never been a neutral. We were just lulled into a kind of a sleep thinking that maybe there is neutral. Maybe we can just skate by. Maybe we can just be Christians, but just hide under the radar, and we don't have to really share our faith. We don't have to really live out our faith, because the culture is Christian broadly, and the morals of the culture are Christian broadly, and we can just kind of live, and everybody, again, live and let live, and it's fine. Everybody's fine. You don't really need to express your faith, or you don't need to deny anything. But we're not in that culture anymore. If you haven't noticed, we're in a different culture, and we're in a culture where now you must declare your allegiance. Even silly candy company spokes candies have to declare their allegiance to this. And what I find really funny and interesting is, if you don't, even these poor spokes candies who don't exist, they're just anthropomorphic, like human-like little candies with personalities, because everything has feelings now, even candy. Now you must get along, or even in the sake of these poor little candies, you are in fact canceled, like they are. We'll stay tuned to this story to see what happens, but for now, we're moving on to bigger and better things, or something like that, and we're going to New York. Why is everything New York, or Texas, or Florida, or California, I guess? Anyway, that's where everything happens, but we have a statue that was placed on the top of the New York courthouse. That is, it's hideous, but it's more than that. So here's what the statue is. I've got a picture of it for you. So this is the statue. I'm gonna post this here. If you haven't seen it, you can look up the statue, or go to churchpublic.com. /podcasts and watch this to see the statue. So here's the statue. Art is art. We have a longer conversation about art and beauty at a later time. But what we need to hear from this is that this statue is a change to the ideology of the courthouse. Now, it's not really. What this does is it just aligns this culture with the court in a way that really already exists. But we have to look at it and kind of talk about it anyway, because of what it does. So here's the statue again, and if you can't see it, I will describe it for you. It is a golden statue coming out of a lotus. It is a female type figure, with a lace, I don't know what to call it, doily, I think is what they're calling it. And that is representative, so the artist says, of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And then coming out of this statue's head are, I guess, braids, according to the description, but they look like goat horns. So if you didn't know any better, it looks like a satanic statue with goat horns, and it's a female figure. And so pretty quickly you'd think satanic abortion statue. And you're not really wrong. The artist, according to Town Hall, has made the statue in honor of former Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who, by the way, said Roe v. Wade was a bad decision. You can look that up. You don't have to take my word for it. She really didn't like it because it was a bad constitutional decision, though she was an abortion proponent. So a little back and forth there. So the artist Shazia Sikander named the figure Now, which she said could function as a site of resistance after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade last June. She said, with Ginsburg's death and the reversal of Roe, there was a setback to women's constitutional progress. She describes it this way. Now, an 8-foot sculpture on the roof of the courthouse uses the same feminine form as in Witness, but instead, Witness, by the way, is another statue that she did that's apparently like down in the courtyard or something like that. But instead of the skirt raising, the body emerges out of the seat of a lotus. The lotus is symbolic of a deeper truth beyond its form, alluding to perception as illusion. I'm going to skip through a little bit of this. The invisible roots of the lotus that lie below the depths of the water are echoed in the roots of the feminine figure. I'm going to skip through a little bit of this lotus. The female body has a face with its hair braided into spiraling horns. The horns mimic the movement of the arms, and they're a symbol of sovereignty and autonomy. Femininity to me is the tension between women and power, how society perceives such a dynamic, and how erasure is enacted by the social forces that shape women's lives. Throughout literature, the notion of the female has been in conversation with the visible-invisible divide, the feminine as the monstrous, the vulnerable, intimacy, selfhood, valor, resistance, and femininity's intersections with race and war are markers of fear that lurks when boundaries melt. One more part on this. She says the recent focus on reproductive rights in the U.S. after Supreme Court overturned 1973 decision that guaranteed the constitutional right to abortion in the U.S. That's not what it did, but okay. In the dismissal, too, of indefatigable... Wow, that's a word I've never seen before. Anyway, spirit of women who have collectively been fighting their right to own their bodies over generations. However, the enduring power lies with the people who step in and remain in the fight for equality. That spirit and grit is what I want to capture in both the sculptures. All right, so let's talk about this. Here's the deal. This statue is a female figure which has no power to reproduce, just by the way the figure has been created. Because the whole statue, according to the person who created the statue, is about abortion. It's about not doing the thing that women were literally created to do, which is produce life. Women were created to produce life. That's just, it's biologically true, it's physically true, and it's spiritually true. This is the way God intended it. And this statue celebrates, honors, wishes for, longs for the place where women don't produce life. And that is connected on the top with these goat horns that have been a symbol of Satan and satanic cultism for a long time, which has reasons that we won't get into at this point, but it just is. That's just true. Which really, to me, and whether this artist knew it or not, intended it or not, I feel like sometimes art says things that we have trouble saying, and I think this does that. But I think unintentionally, this has done something the artist didn't mean to do. Or maybe they did, I don't know. But what I see is a satanic image with the goat horns and head that show the power of the man to dominate in a bad way, in an evil way, over a woman who has made themselves infertile to be as much like the man as possible. Eliminating spirituality, eliminating God-given role, creation order, any of the things that make this life beautiful. The woman literally or intentionally removes the God-given superpower of creating life for this false male lifestyle of something like boss babe. This is the lie of feminism, that you have to become a man, become like a man to have value and worth. But to do so requires, by this artist and by the culture, to do so, becoming like a man requires you to give up your actual identity, which is of a woman. This is the promise of feminism that ends in the destruction of womanhood. And this is what we see. And that's why it's so tragic. This whole statue claims to be for the empowerment of women, but really just subjugates women into a place where they have to work in the workplace and to have babies, to be mothers, is seen as bad. It destroys what a woman is, which of course leads us into the whole transgender conversation, because apparently, according to this statue, this isn't me talking, this is the view, the symbolism of this very statue, to be the most like a man you can be, horns and all, is the goal. Removing the very thing that makes you a woman is the goal of this statue, is the goal of this whole movement. And rather than celebrating what a woman by nature is, the need is there apparently to change it into something that it just cannot be, which makes this trans movement possible, which makes it all the goal for a woman to become a man. And it's just so sad to me. It's so sad to me that people are falling into this lie. And that's not even talking about the fact that we're murdering babies to promote this lie, which of course we're doing. It's a very sad symbol to me. That is, we have to also talk about, placed on the top of the courthouse. So the identification then, the symbolic nature of this then is that this symbol of this new time golden calf is supposed to represent the law of the land, but the law of the land is supposed to be blind to power and wealth and race and gender and anything. This statue is saying, rather than justice being blind, like justice is portrayed as a sculpture, a statue, this shows that justice is supposed to be in favor of women, in favor of women's rights, in favor of women over men. So women should be given more power than men in the court of law. But no one should be given more power than another. That's the whole point of law. The whole point of law is to help people not be more powerful than other people. It shouldn't matter who you are, where you come from, how much money you have. It should only matter what you have done, and you are judged based on what you have done. I do have to turn back to the Bible too, of course, because to me, as soon as I saw this, as soon as I heard this, it reminded me of the golden calf story in Exodus 32, when Moses goes up to literally get the 10 Commandments, which help us know what is right and what is wrong. And while he's up there, the people go, he's taking too long. You can go and read the story in Exodus 32. While Moses is up there connecting with God, getting the literal word of God that helps us live, the people say, he's taking too long. Let's just make another idol that we can worship in the meantime. And I just, like, the irony for me, at least, is so self-evident that people cannot wait for God's truth and God's justice. And rather than waiting, they put up a golden statue of a false god on the top of the courthouse, intending to do more for quote unquote justice rather than living in the truth of actual justice. Well, that's the golden calf that went up on the top of the New York courthouse. At any rate, we'll move on from there onto other court things. Let's talk about the Declaration of Independence. Now, I personally love the Declaration of Independence. I love it because it is beautifully written. Now, I understand if you haven't read it, I would suggest you read it. Now, I was going to say I understand that the language is a little bit old, and I mean, like, there are words that you don't use in everyday speech. I know that. It's kind of like King James if you're doing a Bible translation. It's kind of like that. I get it. But you should read it, and maybe even read it with some kind of commentary where you can understand what it says. It's not very long. It shouldn't take you very long to read, but you should understand what's in it, because what is in it is really good. It really is a great summary of a lot of different things that have come throughout the centuries, like Lex Rex and the Magna Carta. And I'm not going to get into all those because you history people out there love it, and everybody else just glazes over and falls into a coma when I start talking about history. So I'm going to be careful not to go too far into that. But the Declaration by these really smart men was written in such a way that we can understand why things are the way they are, what the natural order is, and where that comes from, because that is a really big part of it. Where do we get these rights, as referred back to the last story? Where do we get these rights? Where do they come from? Are these rights given by government? Does the government create our rights out of nothing? Or does a leader, like the king in the sense of the Declaration, say, you have these rights because I, the king, have deemed these rights to you, given these rights to you, which is what the king at the time was saying. And the founders of America said no to both of those questions. Your rights come from God because God gave them to you, and the government protects them, the government enshrines them, the government follows along with the natural law so that your rights are protected in various cases. So this is a really important point. And it's a really important point to understand where authority comes from, where it lies, whether it is in a document, no. Whether it is a person, like a king or a ruler or a president or vice president or whatever, no. Or whether that authority comes from God, yes. Those are the options. And really, those are the only options. You can go throughout history, throughout all kinds of civilizations, and look at, well, where do these rights really come from? Where does my authority really come from? Where does my freedom really come from? And it's one of those three things. And only one of those things is actually the right thing. But you'll have lots of kings throughout time who say they are the source of your freedom and your rights. You'll have some documents over time that say that is the source of your freedom and your rights. And then you have those, like our founders in America, who understood that the rights really came from God. So then we get to a couple of days ago, which happened to be the 50th anniversary of Roe v. Wade, speaking about abortion. And because it has been defeated in court through the Supreme Court actions, it was an interesting year where there was a lot of celebration on the one hand side, and there was a lot of weeping and gnashing of teeth on the other hand. I don't know what else to call it. So you have people making really weird claims about abortion, really weird claims about women's rights, really weird claims about where rights come from, and really weird claims about life in general. So we have our very own wonderful vice president who, well, quoted the Declaration as saying this.
America is a promise. It is a promise of freedom and liberty, not for some, but for all. A promise we made in the Declaration of Independence, that we are each endowed with the right to liberty and the pursuit of happiness. America is...
Okay, so for those of you who remember any history or maybe have read even the first couple of sentences of the Declaration of Independence, might have noticed something there. Notice that there were a couple of kind of key words that were missing from her quoting of the Declaration. And I would even say she sort of undermined her whole argument accidentally. I mean, poor Kamala here, but she missed a couple of key phrases in the Declaration of Independence that actually undermine her whole argument. So if you don't remember the Declaration, right? We hold these truths to be self-evident that we are endowed by our Creator. So she kind of forgot that part, the Creator part. We'll come back to that in a second. with these inalienable rights. And she kind of goes, with these rights, liberty and the pursuit of happiness. And you're sitting there going like, wait, I think there was, what was that first thing you said? We have these rights, their life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Yeah. So what did you say? Before liberty, we have these rights. No. Right after that, we have liberty. No. Right in between those two, life. wait, did you say life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, like it says in the Declaration of Independence? Oh, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, what it says in the Declaration of Independence. So your argument is everybody has rights, and they start with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So it's almost like you're saying in the Declaration of Independence that the first right, the right to life, precedes all the other rights, because if you don't have life, I mean, what other rights can you possibly have because you're not alive? That seems like an argument the founders might be making in this document. You know, you can read it for yourself, but that is what it says. And then somehow by accident, probably she sort of forgot to say the life part. When she's talking about the reversal of Roe v. Wade, where you take away babies' lives because you don't want babies to live for the autonomy of women or blah, 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 whatever, reproductive health, whatever euphemism you want to throw in there. So you just have liberty in the pursuit of happiness because that's what you want. That's what you want the document to really say. You want to just kind of scratch out that pesky life word, because we don't want babies to have life. We just want the mothers to have liberty in the pursuit of happiness. But maybe life is in there for a reason, as I mentioned, because the rights don't come from government and they don't come even from the document. And there was another word that we noted that she missed in there. We're endowed. How? We're just endowed with life, or I'm sorry, not life. She doesn't say life. We're endowed with liberty in the pursuit of happiness. We're just endowed with it. Wait, how do you endow something? Like, don't you have to? Does someone have to endow you? Does that just happen? Like, are you endowed by someone? Like, maybe there's something written in there, like you're endowed by your creator, like God. Are you endowed by God with these rights? Oh, it says in the Declaration, we are endowed by God these inalienable rights that begin with life. It's just so funny that she missed this, and I hate to impugn motives. I hate to give people motives that they don't say outright, though she kind of did by skipping these words. Say that she doesn't care what it says and doesn't care what God says and doesn't really believe that life is a value or a right that's given by God, but rather that liberty and the pursuit of happiness are things that are given by the government, so that if the government deems they can take away your liberty at any time, they can just say that. Because why wouldn't they? Because the government wants to have all the power. And it kind of reminds me of this other clip that's similar, but let's take a look at this.
We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing.
I'm sorry, that was too good. So for whatever reason, this administration just cannot quite figure out who that creator God guy is that maybe created the whole world and gave everything its purpose and in fact gives life. I think this was funny, and I'm gonna play this clip. I don't know if this is gonna make it onto the interwebs because it might be checked or banned or whatever, but it's worth it to see, because this is a great actor talking about another line in the Declaration of Independence. And again, if you haven't read it, go and read it, but this is a great actor talking about the Declaration, so I figured we would watch this too.
Of all the ideas that became the United States, there's a line here that's at the heart of all the others. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and provide new guards for their future security. People don't talk that way anymore.
Beautiful. Huh. No idea what you said.
It means if there's something wrong, those who have the ability to take action have the responsibility to take action.
Man, that is just so good. So, of course, that was the venerable Nick Cage in National Treasure talking about the Declaration of Independence, and another line in it that nobody ever quotes, but is maybe one of the better ones, though they're all really good, essentially saying that sometimes government gets it wrong, which the founders were pointing to the king, of course, in that moment, but sometimes government gets it wrong, and those that have the ability to take action need. They have the responsibility to take it. So I pretty much love that. Let's continue on in legal news. I guess we have new candidates appointed by Biden for federal court who just they didn't know the Constitution. I mean, I don't know what to say here, but if you are on the federal court, I mean, maybe if you're in some podunk court in some little town and you don't deal with federal issues ever, maybe you don't need to memorize all the things in the Constitution. Okay. But if you're on the federal court, it seems like federal matters, Constitution governs federal matters. You should know at least the general idea of what's in the Constitution. I mean, that's just my thought. But let's listen to this federal court nominee answering some kind of basic questions about the Constitution.
Judge on the far end. Tell me what Article 5 of the Constitution does.
Article 5 is not coming to mind at the moment.
Okay. How about Article 2?
Neither is Article 2.
Okay. Do you know what purposivism is?
In my 12 years as an assistant attorney general and my 9 years serving as a judge, I was not faced with that precise question.
So this nominee for the federal court has spent 12 years as assistant attorney general to a state and 9 years as a judge. That's 21 years doing law things, doesn't know basic information about the Constitution. And this should be shocking, but it's not. And the reason it's not shocking is, of course, this person doesn't. They don't like the Constitution. We've just gone through a big exercise where they don't like or know the Declaration of Independence. They don't like these documents because they point to something bigger. They point to something greater. They point to a God that controls the kingdom of the world and the universe, and they don't like that. So they don't want to learn it. They don't want to use it. They want to make laws based on whatever they want to make, whatever their heart feels. You be you, legal scholars. And of course, that's what comes out of it. And I mean, we could talk about Article 2 defining the executive branch of the government. Some of you might remember that. We could talk about Article 5 that talks about the process and procedure of amendments. I mean, these are not like, there's only 7. There are 7 articles in the whole Constitution. It feels like maybe a federal, you might not have remembered. Fine. Unless you're a lawyer or a federal judge, yeah, maybe that's okay. But if you're a federal judge, maybe you should at least have some vague idea of what the Constitution says. I don't know. Maybe I'm talking crazy talk here, but this just points to, again, what is going on in our government. And it does have Christian worldview implications that we have to understand, and we have to appreciate that the powers that be in many of these cases, in many of these areas, don't care what the documents say that are the founding documents of the United States of America. They don't care what the Bible says, clearly, because that's banned in courthouses now across the country. It's banned in schools across the country. You know, talk about all these book bans and all these lefties who are really up in arms about banning books that literally contain pornography. Well, you should be up in arms that the Bible is banned in most schools. The Bible, which our nation was founded upon. You can argue it, but I just read from you a couple of points in the Declaration that tied directly back to the Bible. The book of Deuteronomy in the Bible is the most quoted bit in the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. The book of Deuteronomy, like, you can make the argument that the Bible was not instrumental in forming the country, but you're just wrong. I don't know. I'm sorry to tell you that, but that's just the way that we are in. And the powers that be currently don't want to acknowledge it, don't want to admit it, don't want to learn it, don't want to say anything about it. So you just have to realize that is what we're up against. That is where we are in this country. So you should know what the Bible says. You should read it as much as you can. You should know what the initial documents. Read the Constitution. Now, you probably can't see it right on my shoulder here, but there's a big red book that contains a lot of constitutional documents that I read through because I'm interested and I'm weird and I'm a studier. But you should, I mean, that's a big book. You can read the Constitution in a few minutes. You can read the Declaration. It's even shorter. I mean, why wouldn't you know, at least have some knowledge of what this is? Because people are going to omit things. People are going to lie to you about what's really in it. And the same holds true for the Bible. It's misquoted all the time. You should know it for yourself. You don't have to listen and believe me. Just check my work. I've got it open here next to me, but check my work. Like, you should read it for yourself. I want to be a tool to help you get into the process of reading and studying for yourself because you can, because I know you can. All right, a couple more stories before we go. I know we're going long today, but I'm doing less of these because of my schedule, so we're doing less longer than more shorter. Anyway, side point. So this one is gross, but sadly we have to talk about it because this is the state of America. And I don't like being, and I told you so, but I gotta throw this one out there. So this is an article that I found in today.com. The title is, I'm just gonna read this word for word: Mom plus dad plus mom plus dad equals one big happy family. Meet the parents practicing, quote, polyfamily, unquote. And then a subheading, or dad plus mom. In polyfamily, the possibilities are endless, and poly parents say the challenges are worth it. Now, I'm not going to read through this whole article because, frankly, it's weird and kind of gross. But you need to understand that this is exactly what's happening. And I hate to say again that I told you so, but this is what happens when you redefine marriage. You cannot redefine marriage from one man and one woman into anything else because that is just the definition of marriage. You can't redefine gravity into something else. You can't redefine an apple into something else. You can call an apple an orange, but it's still an apple. You can wrap an apple in an avocado skin, but it's still an apple. Once you redefine a thing, it destroys the thing. And that's where we are in marriage. We've redefined it to something that it is not, and therefore there is no limitation to what it can be, or at least what you can pretend it is. And this is an example which I told you was coming, and here we are. We have dad plus mom plus dad plus mom. That's like two couples together. You have dad plus mom. We've looked at those examples before. In California, we looked at the dad plus dad in a relationship, and it just gets weirder and weirder. Polyamory, polyfamily, I don't know how they pronounce this, whatever. We just make up words now to suit our fancy rather than live in the actual reality of life that is. So this is the new way that we are. I'm going to read a couple of points from this article quickly because we're going to move through it. This article says, as society's idea of what constitutes a family continues to expand, some parents are living in polyfamily households where multiple partners birth and care for children under one roof. It talks about two people who were not looking for polyamory, the term for when a person has one or more romantic partners at the same time, but they met two other people. So the couple, it says, one of them says, this is a quote, we didn't even know what polyamory was until we started getting feelings for each other. So now there are four of these people, two boys and two girls, living in a polyamory that becomes a polyfamily. If these terms sound made up, it's because they are. But these two are living together, and now they have more children. So they had two children. One of the couples had two children, 7 and 8. And then they have more children. And one of the women says, I birthed one child. And the other woman says, I birthed the other. And she says, quote, we did not regulate the biology, meaning they don't know who their 22-month-old and their 15-month-old biological fathers are. This is gross and not healthy. And what gets to me is, what are we doing to these children? The Family is designed by God so that a man and a woman get together and have a baby. And the baby, the child, as they are growing, needs the mother's influence and the father's influence. Even to get outside of the scripture and to go into psychology, everyone agrees with this. To then say, there's a baby in a family of 4 adults, 2 men and 2 women, who doesn't know who the father is and doesn't know who the actual mother is, can only be incredibly crazy and confusing, and also may lead to more kinds of damage. I don't know in this case, but this is just not a great area to build stability in. We'll say it that way. And this is where we are. Then this article goes on to say there has been a rise in polyamorous relationships. They have gained popularity in many years. The Today article says one 2021 study says there are, the study of 3,438 adults says 1 in 6 wants to be polyamorous and 1 in 9 have already been so. In other words, it's growing. This idea is growing. Shows like Sister Wives make us laugh, it says, but I think people, I'm not even going to read that. I'm just going to move on. But this is where we get, because what are the limits? If you say a man can be a woman and a woman can be a man, if you say a man and a man can have a marriage, a woman and a woman can have a marriage, why is there a limit? Why can't a man and a man and a woman have a marriage? Why can't a man and a man and a man have a marriage? Why can't a man and a child have a marriage? And you're like, oh yeah, everything was good until you said that last one. Why? What is the difference? What is the limiter? These are not my rules. I don't like these rules. I don't think these are appropriate rules. But these are the rules that they are trying to make for the country. And now we're in this place where there's a new law that was just passed that if polyamory, polygamy, whatever, is practiced and allowed in one state, it could possibly be practiced and allowed in others by law because of the laws that have been recently passed by the Biden administration. This is the world that we're in. And we have to recognize that we're up against this. And so how do you live? And I'm not scared in a sense. I don't want to promote fear in a sense. I don't want to promote anger in a sense. I want to love people where they are and try to lead them to Jesus. But we also have to have a mind for the truth. What is true and what is right and what is good? And this is neither of those things. It just doesn't lead to good outcomes. And unfortunately, to give a prediction that I probably shouldn't, we're going to see the end result of this. We're going to see the end result in culture of what this does to these children. That's what breaks my heart the most. It breaks my heart the most for what's going to happen to these children when we get to the end of this, when those children are grown. Are they going to be functional, spiritual, rational members of society that contribute, or is there going to be a fair bit of brokenness that is brought up because of this? I think the last thing is probably true. We're going to have to see what happens. I guess I would say I hope I'm wrong, but based on history, based on studying, based on the view of reality, I'm probably not wrong, and I hate that. But it is what it is. So this is the world that we live in. This was just an article that came across my desktop when I was looking for some things to talk about, and it makes me sad, but it gives us a lot to pray for and a lot to promote as we look into what spiritual realities there are. I got to give one more story. If you've made it this far, thank you so much. I'm just going to keep going. If you got to go somewhere, pause it and come back later. But I'm just going to keep going a little bit with one more story because I think this is important as we think about our culture, as we think about our children, as we think about the world that we're going into, which is what I was just talking about in the last story. So this story is about crystals. Now, I have known about crystals for a long, long time. I grew up a while ago, so this is nothing new per se. But what I have seen is a huge rise in crystals. And so I came across an article in Religion News Service this week that has seen and is seeing the same thing. And I've actually talked about this before, so this isn't anything new particularly, but it is growing. And I think that's the piece to look at and to watch out for, because it's subtle and it seems innocuous and it seems like something that has no problems with it. But I want to caution that it actually does. This actually has some issues, and we need to know about them, and we need to watch out for them. So this article in Religion News is called "For Gen Z, Crystals Embed Spirituality in the Planet. They often seem to occupy a place once held by traditional religious beliefs." And that is what I'm seeing too. What I'm seeing is crystals pretty much everywhere. This article talks about a person who says they used to keep their practice with crystal to themselves. They practiced solitary because it was taboo. But now this person, Leanna Greenway, has written a book called "The Crystal Witch, The Magical Way to Calm and Heal the Body, Mind, and Spirit," and young people are reaching out to her in droves. That's the part that we need to look out for. Young people are attracted to this because spirituality has not gone away. It's just changed. I've given you statistics and stories over the years about the decline in especially the younger generation attending mainline denominations, just attending church in general. They're just on the decline. But spirituality has not stopped because we are spiritual beings. We're eternal beings created for our Creator, and we long for that. But when we don't get it in truth, when we don't get it in the Bible, we will find it somewhere else. And it looks like this is one of the places that people are finding it. I've talked about tarot cards. I've talked about all kinds of other witchcraft and sorcery. I talked about the time when I met a Wiccan warlord. I can't remember exactly how he titled himself. It was something like that. I won't tell that story again. You can go back and listen to some episodes about that. But I think this is an important piece that we just have to watch out for, that these crystals seem, maybe to us parents, as, well, it's just a crystal, it's no big deal. I want to say that it's more than that, and there is a reason that it's more than that, and we need to be careful with these. This author says, quote, the young people, are asking questions about the magical properties of crystals and herbs. The wave of young people were born with a higher consciousness, she says. They're more focused on the well-being of the planet and more sensitive to the Earth's vibrations, end quote. Now, I'm just going to say, I'll keep going, and then I'll come back to that, because this is it's the age-old worship of a mother religion rather than the worship of what is real. This says a study of tens of thousands of young people ages 13 to 25 found that 44% engage with crystals as a spiritual exercise. 1 of 5 saying they do it on a weekly basis. So that's where I'm saying, like, this is growing. It's getting bigger. We really need to watch out for this. We really need to pay attention to this, parents. If your kid comes home with a crystal, if your kid orders a crystal on Amazon or any of the places which they can do, like, these are available everywhere, and you think, it's just a rock, no big deal. Have a conversation with them. Talk to them about what they're doing. What is this for you? What is this doing for you? Because chances are they also have either this book or they're on one of the social media sites, especially that Chinese social media site, which I would say delete immediately if you haven't already. They're probably on these sites and getting instruction on what to do with these to connect crystals to what I can only say is the occult, to dark spiritual practices, which as a believer we know are really, really bad and seem easy. I had a conversation a little while ago with a person who grew up in the Church of Satan, and how it seemed like they were doing the right thing and living their best life and being free. It actually was very enslaving, and there was a lot of drugs and other illicit things going on because of it. And again, I'm not going to get into all that right now, but just know that this is a real problem, and it's a real problem for kids because they are leaning into this. It's interesting in this article, I think that it says Gen Z spends as much as 3 hours a day on social media. So if you hadn't noticed that, pay attention to that. The celebrities, there's many celebrities who love crystals, love things like this, promote things like this, sell things like this. I was just watching a home decorating show that my wife had on as I was walking through the room, and that home decorator was talking about the power of crystals in the home decorating show. I'm just saying, this is literally everywhere, and we need to watch out for it as parents, because it's gonna come up one way or another, and you probably need to have an answer for, well, is a crystal good? Is it bad? Is it neutral, as we talk about? Is it just something? Is it just a rock, or is there more? And I'm gonna say, like a lot of things that I say, it's not neutral. There's not a lot in this world that's neutral. It's either good or bad. It's either positive or negative. It's either for God or against God. Almost everything can fall into this category. There are very few neutral things. And I know I've talked a bit for today, so appreciate you. If you've made it this far, you're awesome. We're just going to end with some Bible about this, because the Bible warns about these kinds of practices. I know the Bible warns about a bunch of the things that we were talking about today, but this in particular, anything related to superstition, related to the occult, God says is bad. He even says stronger than that the occult is detestable, Deuteronomy 18:10. And witchcraft is idolatry and ungodly behavior, as Paul points out in Galatians 5, about 19 through 20. If you're using crystals, charms, amulets, talismans, tarot cards, all of these things, the Ouija board games, there's a bunch of other magical, quote unquote, games. It may seem like just games. It may seem like just things. Oh, and the horoscope apps, I got to point out, like horoscope apps were the #1 downloaded app in the last couple of years. So know that people are doing these things. I've had friends of my daughter's who have tried to get her into horoscope apps. And it seems like, oh, it's just no big deal. You're just learning about the signs and you're just learning about what happens in the universe. No, it is a big deal. Anything that will seek to manipulate the spirit world is witchcraft, is occult. Crystals are an example of this. Even though crystals are beautiful, I've loved looking for crystals, doing hikes and things like that, doing digs. It's really cool. They're beautiful, and they are a great representation of how God makes the world. There's nothing wrong with having a crystal on your shelf because it's beautiful and because it's the way God has made the universe. But there is nothing magical about them. And using them in any spiritual or magical way is idolatry and witchcraft and occult and evil, and can unlock evil things in your life that you don't want, let me just tell you. It is idolatry because it depends on spiritual forces rather than God for healing, protection, divination, or understanding of the universe. If you're using crystals for anything but a decoration or a paperweight, it's worship of something other than God, which is idolatry, which is strongly forbidden all throughout the Bible. Deuteronomy 4, Jeremiah 44, 1 Corinthians 10, 2 Corinthians 6, and on and on. Idolatry, worship of someone other than God, gets you in a lot of trouble, which gets us back to where we started in Exodus 32. When Moses goes up the mountain to literally come face to face with God, so God can give the people the 10 commandments, which guide us on how we're supposed to live. And instead of the people waiting somewhat patiently for only, I think it was up there 40 days in this particular story, like just a little over a month, people were like, I can't wait anymore. Let's just build a giant golden idol and worship it instead of the real and true God. It's frustrating to read as a reader historically thousands of years later. But the bigger thing that you should take away is we're not any different now. We are still raising golden idols on our courthouses with our crystals all over this country, all over this world. We're still doing the same things. The nature of man does not change, but God, who is unchanging, deserves our worship and praise. We are made to worship him and glorify him and enjoy him forever. I hope that you do that, and I hope that you love God with your heart and soul and mind and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. For Church Public, I'm Matt Odegaard, and as always, keep the faith.